Happy Valentine's Day, everybody, and welcome back to another Ask Mike. You might be wondering, this one looks a little different. Usually we kind of sit together at the desk. We are in boxes today, though, Mike.
Yeah, we had COVID exposures, and just to be safe, we're all negative, but I guess we have to be very careful. So I'm not anywhere near you, and you're not anywhere near me, even though we don't have it.
The magic of television. Thank goodness we're all safe and healthy. All right, let's jump into our new format with the same old things, though. Same question. On Saturday, the basketball Hogs suffered their first loss in a month. Justin Freeman, he predicted it, Mike. He said, I knew this was going to happen after beating Auburn. They were exhausted from that game, couldn't recover in time for Alabama. Do you agree with Justin, Mike?
I don't think they were physically exhausted. There might have been some kind of mental thing where you do all that stuff emotionally after the game, and then you have to kind of get back up after that. Maybe it was a little bit of what Nick Saban always calls rat poison, when you got everybody telling you how great you are, and then you have to turn around and play again. But I don't think that's really what happened. When I looked at that game on paper before it was ever played, the Alabama game, I just felt like Arkansas was not a good matchup for Alabama. And a couple of reasons. Number one, those guys played really good interior defense. They force you to really work if you're going to get a shot in the paint. And then they swipe at the basketball. And it usually for Alabama boils down to whether or not they get called for fouls. And they didn't get called for a lot of fouls. At least some of them they could have been called for. So I thought that hurt Arkansas. And I knew that was going to be an issue. The other thing is how well they shoot three-pointers. And that's been a problem for Arkansas from time to time. Not being out on that three-point line. At times they've been better at it than others, but at the start of the game, Alabama was really hot, and Arkansas left them open. They built up a 10-point lead. Same thing happened in the start of the second half. But the truth is, Arkansas battled back from all of that. They did some things, forced some turnovers, got some inside baskets, or were fouled later on in the game, and they were able to come back and take the lead with about 2.5 minutes to go, and had it again with about a minute and a half to go. I think Arkansas lost that game because they didn't make plays at the end. And in this winning streak, that's what they've been doing. They've been making plays at the end of games. And it just inevitably happens sooner or later. You're not going to do that. And I didn't think they were going to win out anyway, so maybe this will turn out to be a good thing.
And they're also struggling away from Walton Arena this year. 5-5, the Hogs now away from home. That includes neutral site games. All right, Pig's Feet wants to know, Mike, what are your thoughts on the ending of the Arkansas-Alabama basketball game? The reverse call on Devo throwing the ball off the defender. Hogs waiting so long to take a terrible shot. Did the Hogs are tied knock the rebound out? Why didn't the Hogs call to... and why didn't Hog call to after rebounding missed free throw? Thanks.
Yeah.
That last question, that last sentence is confusing me.
Yeah,
there's a lot in there, but it was a lot about possessions.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Let's talk with the Devo thing first, because that's one of my pet peeves, is officials that look at something that you can see what happened, but they didn't see it. And I think that was a reversal anyway. There were only two angles that we saw. I don't know if the officials saw more. But one of the things that you could clearly see, even though you couldn't see the ball go off of the Alabama player's leg, you saw Devo go up in the air, and then you saw that ball bounce backwards out of bounds. If he had bounced it off the floor, if he had missed the guy, it would have gone over on the other side of the court. So you know he hit the guy. There's not anything else there. There's not a post or something in the way. So you knew he did that. The only other question was, as he was coming down and he threw that ball, did his feet touch out of bounds before he did it? And they showed that from another angle, and he didn't. So the refs missed that call, and that enabled Alabama to get that possession. Arkansas led by a point at the time, I think, and that enabled Alabama to come back and score and lead by a point. But, you know, it's just one of those things where they came back and took the lead, I think, 2 more times after that. It was defense that hurt them. Yes, the fact is they overcame that. So, you know, the Devo thing was frustrating, but it didn't cost them the game, in my opinion. The call didn't. Now, you know, J.D. Notae taking the shot that he took, why didn't you call timeout there? That's not what Muss does. It's just he's explained it over and over again. It's not like something that happened in just this game. He has said that he doesn't favor calling timeout and setting up some fancy play in that situation. That's not usually what he does. And in that particular case, he said we had our leading scorer with the ball in his hand, and I like the idea of him going and forcing the defense to react to him. The problem was he just did the wrong thing. If you look at that video and you slowed it down, he started floating along the three-point line almost like he needed a three-pointer. Arkansas was just down by one. And if you look, there were two defenders on one side of him and another on the other, and there was a clear gap there. He could have gone straight through that gap. There were two guys under the basket. I don't think he would have been successful trying to attack the basket for a layup, but he could have gotten a much shorter jump shot, and he just didn't do it. So, you know, we could all sit here and analyze that, but, you know, you put yourself in that situation. It's a bang-bang thing. You just do what you think you should do, and sometimes it doesn't work out. Now, the Devo Davis rebound after the missed free throw with about a little over 3 seconds left. What do you do there? Do you call timeout? I was talking to C.J. Macklin, our C.J. Macklin. He made a very good point, and it's this. When you call a timeout there, the clock stops. Therefore, what you can do is inbound the ball through a pass that goes down to wherever you want the person to shoot the shot. And if he's able to catch that pass, there's no time off the clock while that pass is in the air. Whereas if you just rebound the ball and turn around and start dribbling, time is going off the clock. And Devo he took the shot about a second too soon. He could have gotten a little closer, didn't have to shoot that half-court shot, but come on.
Yeah.
Are you going to be sitting there looking at the shot clock when you're trying to move toward the basket? I just think that, yes, if you call timeout there, it's still a risk, Nick. It's still a risk because put yourself in that position. You've got to throw from the back court down into the front court, and they're going to be defending everybody. You put that ball in the air, probably it's going to either be picked off or it's going to be knocked away. So it's probably not going to work that way either, but you maybe have a little bit better shot doing that than you would be trying to dribble down and the clock's ticking and then you get to midcourt and shoot a half-court shot. So
I think either way, it's a low percentage
difficult.
Shot. No matter what you did, it was going to be a prayer, right?
But I agree with DJ, or CJ. I think probably calling timeout there's a better option just because, again, you can get the ball down into the front court with no time off the clock. If you successfully get it to somebody, they're going to be defended. What are the odds that if they go up and shoot, they're not going to be fouled? They might be.
That's true, too.
And
That's
then
true, too.
The issue would be you have to be able to connect with somebody. You have to throw it down there, and somebody's got to get the ball.
All right. Well, we talk about getting to the line on that last possession. Robbie Goodman says free throws were the difference. Note missed the front end 1-and-1. Also, Tony's technical turned out to be huge. They hit both while he went 1 for 2. Free throws.
Let's address that Tony thing because people have said to me, well, that cost him the game. Audi's Tony, if he doesn't get that technical, that was in the first half. No, come on, you got an entire second half of basketball. Yes, if he doesn't get the technical, and what he did, he turned around, threw the ball off the guy. Guy probably said something to him, made him mad. You got to control your temper. If he doesn't do that, he goes down with a trailing by 2 with a chance to tie the game up right before halftime. They maybe go in with the game tied at halftime. Instead, the Alabama player that he threw the ball off of shoots 2, makes both of them, then he shoots 1 and misses 1. So Alabama gets a net gain of a point. They go with a 3-point lead instead of maybe the game being tied. So that's a bonehead move. And if it happened in the end of the game, you'd be going, what a goofball. But, I mean, that was way too early in the game to say that cost them the game. The free throws, yes, particularly Jalen Williams is a good free throw shooter. And J.D. Note, who's a good free throw shooter. They both didn't shoot the way they usually do. And, yes, you could make a good case for if they had shot better from the free throw line, Arkansas would have won the game.
Mousetown wants to know on Twitter, did you change your thinking on why Arkansas should not rush the court if they beat Auburn? I know you had an opinion on this before, and he says, if so, why?
Yeah, I'd already said after the game, I went on Twitter and said I was wrong about that. And I've already addressed it in a Pig Trail Nation newscast, too. I think we did it in the Pig Trail show yesterday.
We did, yeah.
Here's here's still my thinking on that in general. I don't think you rush the court just because a team happens to be good in a particular year. I think you have to have respect for the program and the history of the program. My thinking was, okay, Arkansas has been to five Final Fours. In 1978, they finished third when they still did that at the Final Four when they still designated a third-place team. So they finished third nationally in 78. In 95, they finished national runner-up. In 94, they won a national championship, and as late as last year, they went to the Elite Eight. Auburn has done none of that stuff. Their big claim to fame is they've been number one for 2 weeks in the entire history of Auburn basketball. So I'm thinking, wait a minute, you're suddenly promoting these guys way up here. They're good this year. But storm the court if you're playing Duke with Krzyzewski as the head coach, and he comes to Bud Walton, and they're number one with all their history, yeah, you storm the court. Maybe you do that with Kentucky. But you don't do it with Auburn because you afford them too much respect. But here's what I didn't see happening. I'd looked at the crowds this year. Place is sold out. Was sold out before the season started. But still, what did we see in some of those SEC games? We had 17,000, 18,000. I figured it'd be a little more for Auburn. Maybe they get close to a sellout, but I figured there would be some empty seats. In no way did I think they would go over 20,000. That's only happened a few times, and it was back in the 90s when Arkansas was really, really good. Now, I've also talked about the fact that if you have not ever been in Bud Walton Arena when a crowd is over 20,000, you'd miss something because it goes to another level when the crowd is that big. So I had no way of knowing that was going to happen. Then I didn't anticipate this, and this is what I think really happened. I think we've got really smart fans, and I think they knew, wait a minute, we've had all this talk about Arkansas used to do this and used to be that. We're going to show college basketball what we used to be all about, and we're going to say that's what we're all about now too, because that's what they did. That turned out to be the highest rated basketball game on ESPN in over 2 years. And people went nuts at that. And in the end, the reaction was positive. So the way it all happened, with the Auburn players dancing on the logo to start the game, which was really a stupid move by Bruce Pearl, letting them do that. And then he tried to make an excuse by saying, well, that logo is big. We couldn't avoid it. No, you go down on your end of the floor. I watched some video. Arkansas was dancing, and they were down on their end of the floor. They weren't dancing on the logo. So that was dumb. And then the way it ended with Devo bouncing and going up for the stuff, which I still think it probably should have counted. But you watch the kid that came up behind him. He was trying to fight him. He turned around and chased him and was going to do something when the crowd just surrounded him and prevented that from happening, right?
Yeah, so bonus points to the crowd for that one.
Yeah,
Stop the fight.
The way that happened, I made this comparison. They had security all around the edge of that arena. That's like trying to stop a freight train with a rope across the tracks. There's just no way to stop those people. So if you throw all that in, I'm fine with what happened. Just don't do it again unless it's something bigger than that. Because what they've done is they've now shown college basketball. This is what Bud Walton's all about. I remember one of the announcers had talked about how, they keep referring to Auburn's place as the jungle. And he said, well, if that's the jungle, this is the jungle times 2. I'd say the jungle almost times 3, because Arkansas is not content with these little 8,000-seat arenas. They're proud of the fact that they've got a 19,200-seat arena that they can get 20,000 people in if they need to. And that's what all of that showed, so I'm fine with it.
It was an attendance record against Auburn. I think it was 20,300 and some change at that game. All right, Team Otis asks, what did you think of shirtless Eric Musselman? Did he live up to his name of being a muscle man?
First of all, how many college basketball coaches, especially over the age of 50, could pull that off? I mean, give me a break. You take your shirt off, you look like a goober. This guy, he looks like he's got a muscle mass index of what do they call that? The fat content
body mass content. BMIs?
It's like a 10% or something. It's like an athlete.
He also had his sling on. He took off his shirt.
Yeah,
he took off his shirt and then put his sling back on.
How do you do that without that hurting?
I don't know.
And then in there with all these fans going cuckoo and they're bumping into you and stuff. And he said he doesn't take pain medication because you can't coach with that stuff. It affects your thinking. So that had to be, he took a risk. And I think that was another thing. You're watching that game, you know, you're somebody out there watching that and you say, man, they got a crazy coach. I like that. So all of that was good. I just wonder how he stays in shape. And Alyssa told me that what he does is, because it's not weightlifting, you can tell that. I think what she said made sense. He's on the treadmill all the time.
Yeah, I know in hotels during his March Madness run last year, he was always on a bike, a stationary bike.
Yeah, he does that. He's doing something to burn off calories all the time. And I mean, the guy's got no body fat. And that's the only way anyone should ever take their shirt off in front of 20,000 people.
That's lead by example for his team, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Wood asks, after seeing what Walton Arena is like with 20,000 crazy fans in the seats, do you think Hunter Yurachek might be rethinking moving upper deck seats to add more skyboxes? The Auburn game showed that the rest of college basketball, that the Bud is the best environment in college basketball. So, skyboxes, Mike?
Well, let me just say that Hunter Yurachek, to my knowledge, has never said that he's going to remove those seats up there. He could have, but I never heard him do it. The only thing I ever heard him say, I think this was before the football season, we went up to something at the Fayetteville Public Library, and he talked about there being a plan to do some renovations at Bud Walton, and they were exploring the revenue part of that if they could afford it. But he didn't say anything specifically. I've talked about that plan because I've heard it as a rumor. And it's really unfair to say, yeah, he was going to do that, because I don't know that he was. But let's assume that he is thinking that way. If he was thinking that way, hopefully this has changed his mind. I've said this before, I'll say it again, the difference, some people may think, what's the difference in 19 or 20,000 and 15? There's a huge difference. And unless you've been in there and seen that, you just don't understand it. Well, now he's been in there and he's seen that. Now, I talked last week about the fact that if you look at the west and east end of Bud Walton Arena on the upper decks, there's room up there to put about 4 skyboxes on each end, so he could add 8 more. Now, if he wants more, I've also studied the outside of the arena, and there's a place up near the top after you get past the brick where it's metal siding and it slants up toward the roof. You could bring that out 90 degrees or just extend straight up from the brick wall, make that glass around there, and then go straight up to the top. And then what you would have is room to put skyboxes above the upper deck. Now, you'd have to have a support structure, but I assume they could do that. And maybe an elevator that takes you up there. But think about that. The allure with that would be, wow, we're up here, we've got these skyboxes, and when we look out behind, we can see all over Fayetteville. You know, it'd be great, or all over the campus. So maybe they could look at something like that. I'm not an architect, but I could see maybe doing that, and that would be cool because you not only don't take away seats, you would add more seats, maybe 3 or 4 more hundred. You get up to 19,500, 600, maybe get 20,600 people in there at some point. So hopefully there will be no removal of the upper deck seats.
I was about to say, we need to schedule you with a meeting of the architect group, whoever designs these things. And I need a rendering by next Ask.
I'll do it for free.
You could design the whole Bud Walton, the Palace yourself. The Palace by Mike Irwin. It would be something. We'll hop you on an editor and we'll see what you can come up with. All right. More about the court storming. We got a lot of questions about this week. About the fine this time that the SEC slapped on Arkansas. Travis Fetters on Twitter says, the University of Arkansas pays more for advertising yearly than the $250,000 that they were fined for this court storming, their third offense. Think of it as advertising. These kids and this program, we are money ahead of this time.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. It was worth it, probably more than worth it, and I'm fine with all that. Here's the issue I have. If you're the SEC and you're going to tell Arkansas, oh, you did a bad thing, you let your fans run out on the court, we have to fine you $250,000, then leave it at that. Don't use video of the court storming to promote SEC basketball, because what you're basically saying when you do that is, look, everybody, isn't this cool, all these fans running around on the court? But wait a minute, you just said it was bad.
Give me money.
So which is it? You can't say it's bad and then use it to promote SEC. There's a phoniness here.
It's like hypocrisy.
You know,
don't do it, but when you do it,
yes.
Oh, this is great.
You know good and well that the SEC office and ESPN were both sitting there going, rush the court, this will be great. But then, oh, we have to officially give you a fine. So I don't know. That fine may have to be reworked. I mean, a long time ago, somebody broke their arm or something at a basketball game in a crowd. I mean, this is not Brazil. We're not running around stomping people into the ground and they're dying because of a riot at a game. I don't know. They're probably not ever going to change that. But if you're going to find a school for doing that, don't use the video of that to promote the sport. Because again, you're saying this is bad. Don't do that. But wow, look at this. This is really cool.
Yeah.
It doesn't compute.
Every other offense from now on is going to be $250,000 maximum for Arkansas.
Yeah.
3+
Doesn't
now.
go
That's
up
their third
anymore.
offense.
It doesn't go to half
Yeah,
millions.
it doesn't. So 250 is that max.
But
so it's so hard.
Nick, don't you love all these people that we went on social media and they're going, hey, it's all right. They can afford it. Johnny Tyson will pay for that. What if you had to pay for that? Then I don't think you'd be saying that.
Yeah,
but it was worth it.
Crowdfunding. I don't know. Even if you put every single usher in the building on that court, it was not going to stop what happened.
No.
It's such a hard.
No way
you
to
can't
stop
stop
it.
that fine. No, you can't stop 20,000 people
And
from
so
rushing
why
your
are you
court.
fining them when they couldn't? There was nothing they could do. What are they going to do? Put up a wall, a glass wall, all the way around?
I
the
don't
arena?
know. It's unless you want to decrease capacity, you're not going to fix that problem. That's hard to do. All right. Alex for Hogs 88 says, all right, let's switch things up. On Hogville, this Brian Arson stuff is making me go down memory lane. At what point do you believe Chad Morris lost our players? Looking back, he just came off as a real jerk like Harsin. Talking about
First of
Auburn
all,
coach.
I would not put those two guys in the same sentence. Brian Harsin won. He was a successful head coach at Arkansas State. He was a successful head coach at Boise State. And in his first year in the SEC at Auburn, they won 6 games. Chad Morris won, 4 games in 2 years? And no SEC games? I mean, Auburn won a big game here. They're one of the few teams that came in there. I'd have to go look, but beating Arkansas here was a big deal.
Yeah.
So he was not a failure, not in the way that Chad Morris was. Now this whole business about both of them being gripey. Well, I'm going to address Morris first. He had what I call a phony gripiness. He was pretty cool most of the time we were around him, and all of a sudden he'd get mad about something, he'd lay the hammer down. We're going to show up, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and I'm going to chew you guys out. And what I heard from a lot of the players was the inconsistency of it. He didn't instill discipline most of the time, but then suddenly he wanted to do it. And it's like, what do you want to do? What kind of coach are you? He lost the fans that first year early in the season when they went to Colorado State. You've got Cole Kelly, a 6'7", 260-pound quarterback that could take a snap, push his center forward, and get 2 to 3 yards every time he did it. There was no way to stop him. He never lost yardage on a quarterback sneak. And Morris, on 4th and 1, just past the 50, punted. After you came in just a little bit earlier and did all this first left lane hammer down stuff. Oh, we're going to go for it. We're blowing, left lane hammer down. No, you weren't. You were left lane, drive off the road and sit there for a while. That's what you were. And so that hurt the fans. I think they just went, what are you doing? And it was that inconsistency that the players noticed. And we noticed it, in the media. He'd have these press conferences, right? Every Monday, he'd have a press conference. And he would come in there with notes. And he had this guy standing off to the right against the wall, Sean Toohey, and he'd be over there with the notes too. And you could tell that they made these notes up.
Like some talking points. They're like,
you have to come up with a game plan for the press conference. What? You just go in there and answer questions, off the top of your head. You don't need a game plan for that.
Scouting report your questions.
Not like the Razorback media is scary or something. I mean, and it just made no sense. So don't compare those two guys. Now let's address Harsin. I'll just give you my view of that. The last few years when I've looked at Auburn, I've scratched my head. What's going on with those guys? They look really good and then they don't. I mean, the most impressive thing they did last season was come to Fayetteville and beat Arkansas, a team that was playing really well. So how do you do that and then lose virtually the last 5 or 6 games? I think they lost maybe 4 games.
Yeah, they went on a
losing streak. And what happened? Well, all you have to do is look at some of their players, especially Bo Nix, their quarterback. You'd see him have a great game, and then he'd be having a bad game. He'd be over yelling at the coaches on the sideline. Somebody needed to bounce a foot off his backside, and nobody ever did that. Well, now Harsin comes in, and what I was told by people that I trust is he came in and said, wait a minute, we got a bunch of entitled players around here, and that's going to change. And a bunch of them went, hey, I'm heading for the portal. That's what players do these days when they don't like a coach. Oh, you're mean. I'm going to the portal. But the ones that stayed, what did they say publicly? They said, we need a guy like that. We need this. So why was all this going on with Harsin? Come on, if you know anything about Auburn, you know you've got these boosters who have influence over the Board of Trustees, and then you got an AD and a school president. And when Gus Malzahn basically was run out of there, they wanted Kevin Steele, the defensive coordinator. For whatever reason, they wanted him as the head coach. What you ended up with was Harsin, because the school president backed the AD and said, no, we're the ones in charge of hiring somebody, not these Board of Trustees people over here. And they did it. And then from that point on, it was like, well, this guy better win or we're going to get him. Well, they made a play for him. And look what they did. Look how pitiful this was. They used social media to float all kinds of unfounded rumors like, he's got a girlfriend. No, it turned out they couldn't prove that. He just had a girl that he brought with him from Boise State who was an intern who came in as part of the football staff at Auburn. She's attractive. What is that? That doesn't mean he's having an affair with her. And believe me, he wasn't, because they couldn't prove it. And if they could have proven it, they would have used it against him. They were trying to figure out a way to fire him and not pay his $18 million. And they couldn't do it. And then all this stuff about him being a mean guy and terrible, and people left. I mean, come on, you had too many players already on that team saying no, and you had some coaches saying no. So they couldn't pull it off. So if they fired him, they would have had to pay that money. You can't fire Gus 1 year and pay him $20-something million, turn around and pay this guy 18. Even Auburn doesn't have that kind of money. So he's back. Now, ball's in his court now. We'll see what he does from here on out.
God, don't envy being an Auburn fan.
Oh, and this is why having a strong AD is so important. Look what happened with Hunter Yurachek. Look, I know for a fact there were a bunch of boosters that did not want Musselman. They wanted Chris Beard, and they were pushing for it. They wanted to wait until Texas Tech finished the season, and remember, they went all the way to the championship game. They wanted to wait and then offer him the job. And Yurachek told me, I was standing there, he said, what would I have if I hired a guy that went that far with the team and was willing to dump him? He said, I wouldn't want somebody like that. He hired Musselman because Musselman, from the very first part of the phone call, Musselman was saying, I want to come to Arkansas. I've always wanted to coach at Arkansas. I know all about Arkansas. I know all these things. And he rattled off all this stuff he knew about Arkansas. And Yurachek said, man, I knew I had a guy that was a good coach, checked out his background. He's up and coming in the college game, and he wants to be here. Did the same thing with Sam Pittman. Boosters didn't want Sam Pittman. They wanted Butch Davis. And Yurachek said, I'm the AD, I make the hire, I'm hiring this guy. Now, who's questioning that today? I will stand here all day long and tell you, you hire an athletic director, number one, to hire coaches. You don't let the board hire coaches. You don't let boosters hire coaches. You don't let them run programs. You hire an AD to hire a head coach to run your program, and if the coach doesn't get the job done, then you let him go. That's the way it should work. And it doesn't work that way everywhere, but they're trying to make that work that way at Auburn after decades of letting those boosters behind the scenes control everything.
Well, we know Sam Pittman has had a bunch of success here at Arkansas winning an Outback Bowl this season, but Muskogee Hog fan asks, on Hogville, what would be the most underachieving football team since 2007, so the last 15 years, with the talent they had on the team and that at that time, and why did they tend to underachieve? So, Mike, who, in your opinion, the most underachieving team in the last 15 years?
I don't think there's any question about it. 2007. In my opinion, the 2007 team had more talent, or at least it had more experienced talent than the 2006 team, because most of those guys that made that 2006 team work, they won 10 games, remember, those guys, most of them were back. You had Peyton Hillis, you had Felix Jones, you had Darren McFadden, you had Marcus Monk, you had Reggie Fish, you had all kinds of receivers. You had DJ Williams at tight end on
Yeah, I was
that
waiting
team,
for that
our own DJ Williams, and they had a really good veteran defense. So how does a team that goes to the #1 team in the country, a team that ended up winning the national championship, LSU, how do you go there and beat them, but you lose 5 games? That's insane. So what was wrong with that team? Well, I called DJ. He was on it. I said, what do you think happened? And he said, he put it this way. He said, you know, all that controversy of 2006, you know, after Malzahn left and all that, and Mitch Mustang left and Damian Williams left, all of that happened. The fans went bonkers, a lot of them that were on message boards, and they focused their anger toward Nutt. And he said that got us down because we liked our head coach. We didn't like the fact that every time we got on a message board, we read negative stuff about him. And he also said, you know, Frank Broyles was forced out by John White that year. He was able to stay until the end of the year, 2007, but Jeff Long had already come in as the new AD. And DJ said, we didn't like that either. It was like all this stuff was going on, and we're going, what's wrong? We're winning games. We're good. What is this happening? And so he said that was just like a pall that was hanging over that team, and he thinks that was responsible. But again, it's another example of what happens when you don't have a strong AD. Frank was trying to hang on to his job all during that time. He had boosters that were trying to keep him on the job. You had a president, a school, or a chancellor that was trying to run him off. And Frank had to let boosters kind of do some things because they were helping him stay in his job. And those boosters may have been well-meaning, but they didn't always make the right decisions. And it created all that controversy with those two teams. 06 and 07, in my opinion, could have won the SEC twice without all that controversy. If you just take the talent they had, the people they had in place, they could have won the league both years and maybe won a national championship. That's what booster involvement and fans getting all stirred up and stuff. That's the only time that I've been here at Arkansas in which I compared what was going on to what goes on at Auburn all the time. Those 2 years, Arkansas became Auburn.
All right, let's go moving on now. We kind of discussed this a couple minutes ago about your amateur architecture degree, and Parallax Big is going to keep on it. On Hogville, it says, you've discussed future and current building projects such as Bud Walton Arena and Baum Walker. Does the athletic department have a public list of wants, future building projects, that they are currently raising money for? Can you share what you do know is on that wish list?
You know, when Jeff Long was the AD, you could go to the ArkansasRazorbacks.com website, and they did have some renderings of possible future projects. It was things they were looking into. They don't have that, because I went and looked, and I've looked from time to time. They don't have that now. The only thing that we know that they're working on, because Hunter Yurachek publicly said it, again at the meeting I referred to earlier at the Fayetteville Public Library, he did say that he was looking into how to raise money, because he said Bud Walton was in need of renovation. So we're going to assume that's on the table. They're trying to do that. Now, when we talked to Dave Van Horn, when they had that media walkthrough of the Hunt Family Baseball Performance Center, their new locker rooms and all that stuff, which is fabulous, Van Horn told us, he said, you know what? We need about 4,000 more seats in here, maybe 5. He said, I think we can put 14,000 in here for big games. But he also said, that's going to cost so much that they're not going to do that now. They've just given us a huge bonus with a $30 million project that's over the right field fence. So he said there are other programs on campus that need to be addressed before we do next. And the only thing he mentioned was women's softball. You can look at Bogle Park and see where they could add some more seats, maybe give them a better locker room and workout area over there. There's room behind that. So that may be something they're looking at. There was a plan in place at one time when they were going to do the Baseball Performance Center. They were also going to do something really similar to the indoor track. You may have seen a rendering of that. It's no longer on the website. That showed big stair steps going up over the current entrance, and you would go up to an upper deck that was going to be on the east side, which would add more seating. and it would allow people to walk around on a concourse all the way around, and it was really cool. And I think they just concluded that they just didn't have the money for it. So what they ended up doing was just improve the track itself and stuff that already was there. That may be something that they try to do in the future. But, you know, there's all kinds of projects they could work on. And like I said, I think they could add skyboxes. I think there's a way to do it. Look, at some point, they're going to have to address the football operations center. Again, I had an assistant coach tell me that thing, which was built for Bobby Petrino at his specifications, and Petrino was a notorious recluse. He wanted his football player and his players and his team away from everyone. And it's not surprising to me that about 2/3 of that complex is underground. You can't get down there unless somebody lets you go down there. But that hurts recruiting because recruits come in here and they go, where are the windows? It's like we're in a bunker or something. So I think something's going to have to be done with that. I also believe at some point, no one probably want to hear this, not the old timers, but I think at some point, Barnhill is going to come down and they'll build a new gymnastics / volleyball facility, probably over on the other side of Razorback Road, across from where the football practice field is.
You get a lot of hate for that.
And then when you do that, you could build a multi-story parking deck which would service all of those people on the east side that have those. There's a big fan area. It's a kind of a luxury seating area, but it's not skyboxes, and that's one down below, and then there's skyboxes up above. And you could have underground or covered parking for all of those people and have a sky bridge that comes across where you don't have to get out if it's raining or snowing or cold or whatever. You go right across into your seats. So I think they'll do something. I would, if I was an AD and I was looking at future projects, I'd do that. I think at some point you have to address your big money maker. Now, they just got through a few years ago with this monstrosity on the north end zone, which I understand why they did it. I think there's other ways they could have done it. But they have not addressed the west side of Reynolds Razorback Stadium. It's still a erector set. Looks terrible. It doesn't fit the rest of the stadium. And I've said before, if I had the money, I would go straight down, dig into that hill that goes up toward North Street or whatever it is, and I'd make the street there below exiting the stadium. You come out of there and walk across, and you create a whole area out there for tailgating with fans, with statues of former Razorbacks and coaches at different levels. You just make it multi-level. You have, you know, planters around that and trees and things, and you create a place for when people come to visit. A lot of people don't realize this, but let's say you live in Texas or you live in somewhere in South Arkansas and you're going to go on vacation. People come up here to tour the facilities. And if you came up here and you were able to walk out from westward from the stadium and go up different walkways and have statues and things like that and trees and be able to sit out there, and then when you turn around and looked at the stadium, instead of this erector set thing, it was all bricked in like A&M has, or Oklahoma. Go look at what Oklahoma did to their stadium. They took that erector set and got rid of all of it and put brick and stuff there. So that's a future project that they could do.
I can't wait for Mike Irwin Construction LLC. I mean, it only costs $100 to make a company sometimes with the county. I want you to submit it.
I will volunteer my services if they're interested. I'm just an idea guy. I don't know how you do it. I just know what it would look like and how cool it would be.
I know you wear the little hats around with the red stripe. I want to get you a hard hat. You can just walk around the facilities with a hard hat and just start pointing stuff out of what you want changed. And we'll make notes of it and we'll send it to Juracek. All right, we got 3 more questions left for this Ask Mike. We start with TL Slayton. He says on Facebook, Hog Baseball is just around the corner, kicking off Friday. I can't wait. Who are the big names coming into it this season?
I'm going to defer to you off the bat because they've got a true freshman coming in that at least one publication says is the #2 freshman in the entire country. And he turned down first-round money that would have probably amounted to about $2.5 million. Tell us about this kid.
Yeah, that's Peyton Stovall, shortstop out of Louisiana. I think he's the #1 prospect in Louisiana, and it was Perfect Game who has him ranked as the 2nd best freshman in all of college ball. I think the one topping him is from UCLA, but he's got a really reliable bat. He's a good lineup kid. He's big. He's naturally a shortstop, but his scouting report says he really can't play that position. He's not quick enough at the next level, whether that be college or professional. Second base is where Dave Van Horn wants him to be, but that's Robert Moore's spot. So you're going to see Peyton Stovall, number 10, really playing first base. He's got to be in the lineup. He's got to be in the field somewhere. He's just such a talented player. Yeah, that first-round money, he's the 29th best prospect, and then he opted out of the draft the day of the draft, if I remember right. So $2.4 million was his slot value. That's a lot of money to come play baseball at Arkansas.
And of course, they have Robert Moore coming back. They've got Jalen Battles at shortstop. And they have, oh man, Caden Wallace, who was freshman All-American. He was like right field, and he was at third base. I think they're going to make a center fielder out of him. And this guy can bash the baseball. And I know you've been out there and watched some of these scrimmages. He's hitting home runs. Who else is hitting home runs out there?
Braden Webb, that catcher,
yeah,
Michael Turner,
catcher.
That grad transfer, number 12. He's hit a couple of bombs out there for the scrimmages they've had.
I don't think there's any question this team is going to hit for power, hit for average. They're going to be an offensive force. Question is, you know, you lost your presumed Friday night starter in Peyton Paulette. So what do? Well, looks like Connor Nolan's going to get the start on Friday. This guy's been around forever. Every year that we see him, he looks bigger. He started out as a quarterback and probably could have been a good quarterback, but this guy looks like a linebacker right now on the mound. He's huge. He's been injured off and on a lot in his career. We're told he's finally healthy. He looked pretty good in fall ball last year, and they say so far he's looked really good. So I think you got to keep your fingers crossed that he could be their Friday night guy. Then Jackson Wiggins was this freshman last year with this, he had 98-mile-an-hour fastball, and when he first started pitching last year, people couldn't figure him out, and then they quickly did figure him out, and I was told because he had no movement on his fastball, and he didn't have a lot of other pitches. So when you're just throwing fastballs, even if it's 98 miles an hour, if they know that's what you're doing, you're going to get knocked around. But he supposedly has developed some movement on his fastball, and he's developed some other pitches, so he's a guy you'll be looking at. They've got a bunch of relief pitchers that any one of them could end up being a starter, and then they got a big bullpen. I just think they're going to be fine. I think the pitching is going to be okay, and I think at the plate they're going to be one of the best teams in the country in terms of offense. So it looks good, but you can't say that until it really happens, right?
Yeah, there's such a range for this team. I know D1 baseball has them ranked second in the nation, and then I think collegiate baseball has them ranked 20, and then there's a handful of polls in between.
Who pays any attention to collegiate baseball? Those guys.
There's a bunch of rankings in between that, but they really seem like a consensus top 10 team, at least heading into the preseason. Okay, Eddie Lynn wants to know, what do you think about Razorback Baseball's jersey NIL deal that Robert Moore just announced?
Well, I think it's really good. I like that idea. And, ironically, this is why NIL came about in the first place, because it was one of two reasons. The first reason was the NCAA making all kinds of money off NCAA football and using the image and likeness of these players. I've said this before. If you go back to when Matt Jones was here, you could get NCAA football, like EA Sports, and there was
video game, yeah.
There was a 6'6" quarterback with blonde hair. Who was that? That was Matt Jones. But Matt Jones never got any money for that. So some UCLA players out on the West Coast got a lawyer, and they sued them for that. And then that led to, eventually, it was a long process, about 7 or 8 years, but it led to the NIL that we see today. So the other issue was schools were able to take like a Darren McFadden number 5 jersey, and then they might not have put McFadden's name on the back of it, but it was a number 5, and he was hot when he was here. Oh boy, I got to have a McFadden jersey.
Right.
And they made money off him. He didn't get anything out of it. So now we're back to a point where you can put that name on the back. Robert Moore showed off some of this stuff. Had his name on the back, looked like a baseball jersey to me. Had the number 1 there, looked cool. And so he gets money off of that, and I like that idea.
No, I love it. The name on the back is really what you want, because before, like you said, you could put the number, but you could never put the name.
And this is
everyone in the stadium knew who you were wearing, but it's nice to have it be official.
And this is a good, I like this use of NIL better than some of the other things.
Oh, you don't like having free rights barbecue for the offensive line?
It's okay.
Have them bulk up?
This is better because it's a natural. Fans want to buy those. You always got these people who want to buy these jerseys, and now the athlete gets money off of it.
Oh yeah, it'll be fun to see how many people are sporting who in the stands this year. We'll have to see what the best sold jersey in Arkansas is. Okay, last question for this week's Ask Mike. It's MDW wants to know on Hogville. With the college baseball season starting this week, what 3 predictions will you make for the Razorbacks team this year?
I have to look this up because I wrote them down.
I have them in my hand.
I don't want these. I don't want to. Okay, prediction number 1. Arkansas fans are going to be mad because Tony Vitello is not coming to Bob's
Yeah, okay,
Stadium.
that's a good one.
After that dust-up last year in Knoxville, they were really looking forward to him coming back in here as the former batting coach. They want to give him grief for that dust-up he had with Dave Van Horn. Tennessee's not on the schedule. But, hey, just about every other really good SEC baseball team is.
Yeah, they're coming here. Mississippi State's here.
Yeah.
Vandy's here.
We've got all these teams that are
LSU's
coming
here.
in here, and they're good. And so the schedule is tough. So here's what I'm going to predict because the schedule is so tough. Arkansas will not win the SEC like it did a year ago. And then
That's
my
a good
number
one.
3 prediction is, even though they don't win the SEC, they will go to the College World Series and win a national championship, win the College World Series. This would be a complete reversal of last year when you won the SEC but bombed in the playoffs. This year you don't win the SEC, but you tear it up in the playoffs.
That would be incredible, and just another tip of the cap
That's
to
my-
Dave
that's
Van
my
Horn. And it's
prediction,
in the
and I'm
100th
sticking to it.
season. Would you win a national title in the 100th season of Arkansas baseball? Would be pretty sweet
Wouldn't
too.
that be awesome? And I'm predicting it right now.
Well, it seems
Put
like
my-
I got to
put
go.
my
Every game I
reputation
go
on the
to,
line.
Arkansas does pretty well. So it looks like if I got to be in Omaha if that happens.
Yeah, me too. I'll be
All
there.
right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Have a happy Valentine's Day. If you're watching this later in the week, we'll be back with more next Monday. But that'll wrap up today's Ask Mike.